YouTube was good. Now, I just got done playing the game and finishing it for the very first time in my life. That game that I'm talking about is Final Fantasy IV. And as you can see, I have this loaded up in the screen, and there's the chat to the right and OBS open over there because I was just streaming the game. I finished it, and now is a good time to talk about my thoughts and feelings regarding Final Fantasy IV. And since I have a lot of things fresh in my mind, let me prep the camera right there and do this. Woo! Since I just cleared the game, I want to talk about it. If I'm going to do it at any time or at any given moment, why not do it right now? I'm fresh out of beating the game, and I have a few things to say. Now, let's talk about the bad things first, okay? So we can end the video on a good note. If you've been following me and you've been following the streams where I have been playing the game, I streamed the entire game and I beat the entire game, and it was all documented live on stream. You've probably heard me say that I'm not that much of the main and titular character, the protagonist of the game, Cecil. I think the Dark Knight version of Cecil is way better than the Paladin or the Light version of Cecil. And if you ask me why, it's because of one simple attack he had as a Dark Knight, and when he transformed into a Paladin, it got removed, and that is Dark Wave. I think Dark Wave is perhaps the funnest and best attack in the entire game. It's just my opinion. And even though it takes or it removes some of Cecil's health, when he uses the attack, I still think as an AoE attack and you have it as soon as you start the game, that has to be pretty broken. And upon his transformation into a Paladin and mount ordeals, it gets removed. And I really don't understand why, because that ability was just that fun to use. Why didn't the developers include a light wave attack or just like an AoE? You'd think that the developers thought that it was a very good idea to remove Dark Wave and then add white magic to Cecil's repertoire. And I don't think that's very cool. And what else? The only negative thing besides that I have to say about the game is how PTSD inducing and how stressful some of the dungeons are, towards the end game. And more specifically, the last dungeon that you have to do. I mean, they went full PTSD with how they designed the dungeon, how many floors it has, how many random encounters you have, and just the enemies that you're fighting and the caliber of PTSD enemies and PTSD techniques that you're getting thrown is ludicrous, all right? I do not remember Final Fantasy X being that overwhelming or that PTSD inducing. And mind you, Final Fantasy X was released arguably like 10 or 12 years after the release of Final Fantasy IV. And I think the developers kind of understood that the old school games, and now that I've played Final Fantasy IV and I've also played Final Fantasy VI, the dungeons, and again, the last dungeons before the last boss in these two games, and more specifically in Final Fantasy IV, they are just PTSD inducing. Maybe the developers caught on to that, and as the games progress, they sort of become easier, quote unquote. But yeah, it was undeniably very stressful for myself now that I also remember the last dungeon in FF6. But this dungeon, the one where you have to, the one that leads up or builds up to you fighting Zeramis, the last dungeon, again, holy shit. It's just PTSD inducing. Now, I think that's all I have to say regarding, the bad things that I felt or the bad things I think of the game. Now let's move on to the good ones. And number one, I think the story is fascinating. I really love the beginning of the story. I kind of like the plot. It's pretty standard when you've already played a couple of Final Fantasy games. Story-wise, it's pretty standard. But I don't want to just say standard. I want to say it's pretty good, And Golbez as antagonist, the Four Emperors, Zeromus or Zemus, just the storyline and how you progress, the dialogue between the characters, and I played the uncensored version of the game. I think it was pretty cool. Also, the music, okay, the music is pretty fire. And the music is always going to be fire when a guy like Nobuo Uematsu, the legendary composer, and the man, responsible for most of the OST in many Final Fantasy games. If you got Nobuo Uematsu on board and he's composing the original soundtrack of the game, it's going to be pretty amazing. All right. And I think my favorite song, I have it even loaded up. I was playing it as I was, grinding sometimes and whatnot. It's this one right here by the name of Illusionary World. And you get to hear this for the first time, I think, when you are going to the Phantom World for the first time. And golly gee, is that soundtrack amazing. I've been listening to the extended one fairly a lot because I really like it again. And I just think Nobuo Uematsu's overall work is stellar. It's amazing. And some of the characters, I might have some, hatred for Cecil. Not really hatred, but again, I just think that the removal of Darkwave and not having a replacement for that ability as a light or as a paladin really brings Cecil down to the bottom of the tier when it comes to characters. But at the top of the tier, you have characters that are really fascinating, in my opinion, like Radia, like Edge, like Rosa, even Kain, all right? I think the only character, arguably, that is terrible in Final Fantasy IV is Tella. And all these characters that you get to play with from time to time, and they enter and leave your party. Let's say characters like the two Mysidia wizards, right? You got Polum and Param and the monk Yang. These are all incredible characters. I think they all have incredible skill sets. They're very strong overall, stats-wise. I think the underwhelming characters in the game have to be Tella again and Sid, the engineer, but Cecil with no Lightwave. But Cecil, to his own right, is a very strong character. His regular attacks are doing a lot of damage the higher his level is. And all these other characters that I mentioned, Radia, Edge, Rosa, Kain, and all the characters that you get in between, they're pretty good. They're pretty strong, and I like that. I don't think I have anything negative to say. The only character I'm just regularly shitting on is going to be Cecil. And again, even without the light AoE wave or light wave, he's still a pretty impressive and strong character. And more so when he has the Excalibur, which I believe to be the weapon that he holds in the endgame, right? So, yeah, am I forgetting something? I talked about the story, I talked about the music, I talked about the characters. I really liked the dialogue. For a game that was released arguably like almost 30 years ago, or yeah, right? More than 30 years ago, I still think it's very good. And again, I'm not the kind of person who considers like graphics, and this is mostly like pixel art or very retro. I don't really take that into consideration and look at it as a bad thing. I actually, quite the opposite, find it very charming. And I think overall the game is very good. Now, out of all the Final Fantasy games that I've played, and I've played 4, 6, 9, and 10, and I do plan on playing many of the Final Fantasies. especially those between 4 and 10, the ones that I haven't played. I think out of the ones that I've played, I'm gonna have to put Final Fantasy IV at the bottom of the tier, just because I really enjoy the other Final Fantasies more, and my favorite out of them is Final Fantasy X, which again is the first Final Fantasy game that I was introduced to and played and beat for the first time. I don't think anything compares to that, or what I think, and what I think of Final Fantasy X. Again, for me, it's nostalgic. The game is just incredible. The opening cinematic, and just, I don't want to really talk about Final Fantasy X that much, but even though Final Fantasy IV is at the bottom tier of my list, it's still a pretty good game. I had a lot of fun. I think there were more pros than cons for me, and the PTSD experiences end game and in the last dungeons really don't come, or don't hold a candle to the other good things, or the good things that the game has going on for itself. So yeah, I think that if I would have to grade Final Fantasy IV from 1 to 100, 1 being very poor and 100 being amazing, I would have to give it somewhat of maybe a low 70 to a 85, somewhere in between. Depends on the day, depends on my mood. The max I'm scoring it could be 85, and the lowest I could be scoring it could be like a 70 from 100. So, have you played Final Fantasy IV? What do you think about the game? What do you like or dislike about the game? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you like YouTube videos like these? Let me know in the comments down below. And do you want me to make more of these kinds of videos? Let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, these are my thoughts and feelings regarding Final Fantasy IV. I've already beat the game at least once. I can proudly say that now. And yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you like these kind of videos, and if you want to see more. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next YouTube video or in the next live stream. I stream every day, so I might see you there. Boom! I also need to get a thumbnail for the video, so here we go.